The death of King Tommen Baratheon was the last time that Game of Thrones made me feel anything other than anger and abject disappointment. It's an important event in the series as a whole, and it is likely going to be at least somewhat mirrored in the books in which it's based. Specifically, Cersei receives a prophecy that we learn about during the fourth book, A Feast for Crows, in which she is told that the three children that she's going to have are all going to precede her in death, those being Tommen, Joffrey, and Myrcella. All of them will have gold crowns and gold shrouds, which could mean gold hair. It could mean they're all going to be royalty of some kind, being crowned as king or queen before their deaths, but that's a debate for another day. Specifically, Tommen's death in the books is likely going to happen in the Winds of Winter, as he is destined to die and in a very dangerous location, as we'll get into, but it is probably going to be different than the television adaptation, as in the show, Tommen is independent, he's a teenager, he's very much doing his own thing, but in the books, he's only 8. He still has a regency council, he's never sat the Iron Throne on his own, but he is still very much marked for death in the next installment of the series. Today I'm going to go over a number of theories as to how that demise may come out to pass, some of which are my own, some of which come from the community writ large. I'd love for you to join me as I discuss each and every one of them. On HBO, Tommen's death is in response to the massive explosion caused by his mother at the Great Sept of Baelor, killing his wife, his constituents, and Pope Sparrow. This is a massive event in the show writ large, but overall it's unclear how much of that is going to carry over into the books. Cersei does still have a trial upcoming, but there's no indication that Tommen or his regency is going to ban trials by combat, so it seems very likely that she is going to win by way of using the Undead Mountain. It is semi-likely that this was just invented by the showrunners for some big moment. With that said, Tommen is still facing a number of dangers from all directions here. Aegon the Sixth Targaryen, allegedly, maybe Blackfyre, has landed on the continent as of the end of A Dance with Dragons, and is currently marching on Storm's End, and from there will assumedly march on the capital to take his throne from this boy king. Additionally, we have a group of emissaries coming to the capital that we learn about in the Watcher chapter of A Dance with Dragons. That's Hota's perspective, as these are a number of Dornish individuals, specifically two of the Sand Snakes, are coming in with a vengeance against Cersei for the death of Oberyn Martell by the hand of the Mountain. The two sand snakes arriving at the capital are the first way that Tommen could die, as each of them have a number of different skills that could put his life at risk. The first is Tyene Sand. Both of these individuals are bastards of Oberyn Martell, and Oberyn Martell was famed for his use of poisons. Tyene, his daughter, is no different. She's a master with this type of death, and she is coming into the city disguised as a septa. There's an excess of those around right now, specifically for Cersei, for her trial, for the Sparrow movement in general. I know the fanfiction has her in Cersei's immediate company. I think that's a pretty likely outcome there. But her being in such close proximity to Tommen, either as a septa in general or just being an attendant to Cersei, that is going to give her a lot of opportunity to slip him something at some point. And some fans have a very specific thought as to what that poison might be, as Tommen is always in the company of his favorite individuals, his pets, his cats. Now, I'm a big cat fan. I'm a cat person. My cat, Harry the Air, is wonderful. He's on screen right now, but certain fans have speculated, including this old Reddit comment from 12 years ago, and more recently brought to light and added further details by friend of the channel, InGen, the idea that one of Tommen's cats, or all of Tommen's cats, are going to be poisoned by something called Basilisk Venom. Basilisks are a very obscure creature native to Sithorios, the southernmost continent in this world, and their venom is known to make animals go nuts. They go berserk and kill anything around them. Arya speculates that this is how Jaqen H'ghar got one of his kills in the books in Harrenhal, by making a dog go mad and attack its owner, and the thought of this theory is that Tommen's cats could go mad and tear this little king apart. It would be tragic, as he is such an innocent little presence, and all of these cats are just such a nice thing around the castle, and it could give some importance to Sir Pounce, who we've all been speculating about for decades at this point. I do think if Sir Pounce ends up killing Tommen, he should be technically king. I think that if we're just going by right of conquest, that applies. So overall, I am looking forward to that happening in the Winds of Winter. Jokes aside, I do think it would make a lot of sense the amount of focus the Red Keep cats have gotten to have that play into the plot in a very unexpected way. There's another angle on this poison, which is one of my own invention. I do think it's significantly less likely than the cat's thing, but it is something worth considering. Many people have speculated on Tommen potentially being the Valonqar. This is another part of this Cersei prophecy that I mentioned earlier, specifically that she's going to be killed by a quote-unquote little brother, and I think that Tommen could potentially be that little brother. Some people have suggested that he could be reanimated by Qyburn following his death and end up killing Cersei that way through some just dark magic element. But another angle could be maybe he is poisoned by the Basilisk Venom. He goes nuts and attacks his mom. His hands choke the life from her, as is the case in this prophecy. It's another angle. I don't know how likely it is, but I figured I'd throw it out there anyway. The other sand snake is Nymeria Sand. She's known to be gifted with hidden blades, which is quite interesting, as perhaps she could cut Tommen without anyone even noting. And there is one very specific circumstance where that could end up being deadly. Let me explain. In the books, Tommen is 8 years old, as I mentioned. He has not yet sat the Iron Throne because it's very dangerous. Yes, Joffrey was able to when he was, I think, 13, but that's also age of majority in terms of medieval kings, if we're looking at like France and certain things, with like Louis the 15th and 14th coming into power. But additionally, if Tommen is allowed to sit on the throne for some decree, or maybe his mother's sentence or something similar, or he's placed there by the High Sparrow or something similar, Tommen could end up potentially cutting himself or even dying should he trip and fall upon the Iron Throne. What could be even more likely is perhaps he is on the throne, flanked by many of his constituents, one of whom is Nymeria Sand, who is being sent to the capital to join the small council in Oberyn's stead, since he was supposed to, but he died. Being right next to him and able to potentially strike with her hidden blades, perhaps he could be hamstrung by Nymeria Sand, a cut across the back of his leg, causing him to trip and fall onto the Iron Throne, and being impaled on all of these spikes. With that said, the Sand Snakes are not the only source of death surrounding the young king at this point. Aegon's cause is marching on the capital, and that is very, very dangerous for Tommen. Not only is he likely to get deposed full stop, Jon Connington is someone who many people think could kill Tommen Baratheon. This is a very common idea I've seen expressed again and again and again, and it comes from a lot of Connington's internal thoughts, as I am like to talk about. Specifically, he continually idolizes Tywin Lannister and thinks that he is the ideal vision of what a leader should be, and that Tywin is what's necessary to place his surrogate son, Aegon, on the throne. If we think about the worst thing that Tywin has done, the worst thing that Connington could emulate to take extreme measures to put Aegon on the throne, it is the death of the fake Aegon, supposedly, and Rhaenys, these two children of Rhaegar who are killed on Tywin's orders. This is what Oberyn is seeking vengeance for. This is the source of the supposed death of his surrogate son, and it is something that very much looms large in Connington's mind and is thought about at several points. Additionally, Connington continually thinks about ending the Usurper's line by any means necessary. Tommen is supposedly the Usurper's line. Yes, there are a lot of rumors that he is a bastard. He probably is a bastard. But with that said, we don't ever hear Connington thinking about those rumors. Connington seems to thoroughly think that the Usurper's line is actually continued by Tommen and Myrcella, and will likely take action to make sure that that vengeance is secured for his Silver Prince. What's more, by the time he reaches the capital, it's likely the grayscale could be somewhat further advanced, and it could add both a sense of urgency, and it could maybe make some of Connington's boundaries and civility kind of begin to erode away as the madness begins to take hold. Though I'm not sure how early that'll set in. I have a video on that subject. It's also worth noting that I think there's 0% chance that Tommen's death in the show comes true in the books, as the showrunners specifically note that this specific method of death is kind of a last minute addition. Initially, Tommen was planned to die in battle. What battle? I don't know. Honestly, I think it would have been even cooler if he'd survived into season 7. I think that would have been an interesting dynamic to navigate with these massive meetings that end up happening during that season. But yeah, I think jumping out the window, not likely. Being pushed out the window, however, could be an angle. There are all those spikes outside the Red Keep. I could see, anybody who has a grudge pushing Tommen out of there, or anybody who really wants to get in good with the new Aegon regime. I think it's also important to note that Myrcella is probably doomed to die as well, but I could see her surviving into A Dream of Spring, as gold will be their crowns, gold will be their shrouds, does seem to indicate she'll be crowned as queen at some point, and it's unclear where things will go from there. That could indicate that Tommen will be killed by the Sand Snakes, and that Myrcella will be queen when Aegon arrives in King's Landing, but that would be a can of worms for another video. I could see a billion ways, independent from Tommen, that Myrcella could end up dying, though I do think the Connington one still applies if it's what you buy into. While there are some issues with Tommen's death in the show, I think it captures the core reality of what is going to need to be true about his death in A Song of Ice and Fire 2. Tommen's death is thoroughly and completely a tragedy. This is a child who has been thrust into circumstances that he cannot control even if he wants to, and he is being placed at the mercy of those who are much more ruthless than him, and he is just hated by all sides for things that he hasn't even done. He's not ruled on his own at all, but yet he is going to likely bear the brunt of Aegon's invasion and the vengeance that the Sand Snakes are seeking. That was almost a tongue twister, but regardless, I think that the core thought there is that Tommen's death needs to be something deeply tragic, and I'm sure that Martin will find a way. I think that's why the Sand Snakes killing him sticks out the most to me. It's children of a murdered man murdering the child of someone who is just completely at fault for that, but it is still children killing children with this cycle of violence imagery that Martin really likes to continue to expound on in his work. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I hope you did, and I'll talk much more about A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, Dunk and Egg in the very near future, and I hope you will join me for all of that, as I have many more fun videos coming up in the very near future. My biggest video ever is still chugging on towards completion. We will see when that gets done, though. I make no promises. Less is not none, yada yada. Thank you all. I'll see you soon.